You have to force behaviors. Force behaviors.
ESG is everywhere, and how is this being used to control companies and you? Alright, you beautiful humans. Welcome to our little rendezvous across digital universe. We're not just on YouTube anymore, folks, we've gone full multi-dimensional. Yep, you might be chilling here with me on YouTube, or perhaps you've hooped over to my Twitter feed, where it's like the Wild West of ideas in the best possible way. That's right, folks, Twitter has decided to join the party and help us creators monetize soon, and all while promoting the sweet nectar of freedom of speech. We can talk about all things under the sun without the looming shadows of the ban hammer. Let's jump headfirst into today's spicy topic, ESG and BlackRock. First, let's feast our eyes with this 2017 video where BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink says he believes in forcing behaviors to strong-arm companies into adopting ESG.
You now make a point of that's an investment criteria for you.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. 54% of the incoming class are women. We added 4 more points in terms of diverse employment this year, and what we are doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay?
We're doing the same thing.
And so it's just, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said. And ultimately, it's still going to take time, but I am just as much shocked as Ken is that we have not seen more opportunities, and we're going to have to force change.
ESG, or environmental social governance, is a rating system. Some would say this is the beginning of something we already have in China, a social credit score, but we'll talk about that later. ESG is now used to pressure American companies into adopting progressive practices at every level of their operation. And like so many terrible ideas, this one also comes from the United Nations. Now, this is just impossible to ignore, because for years now they've aggressively advertised the concept good for companies, good for you, good for the planet. Consider the ESG proponents as the regulatory custodians of corporate America, keenly scrutinizing each move companies make. For those companies not shining brightly on S&P 500 ESG index, they face being ostracized by institutional investors and asset managers who themselves are pressured to divest from companies that don't make the ESG cut. At the forefront of ESG crusade stands Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the guy we watched in the video at the beginning. To give you an idea of its influence, BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager, giving it an immense power to shape ESG narrative and influence other companies. Now that's power play, my friends. BlackRock's influence is so substantial that it has the Federal Reserve virtually pleading for its protection. Larry Fink, BlackRock's founder, has personal ties with former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner.
In 2008, New York Federal Reserve leader Timothy Geithner tapped BlackRock to manage the distressed assets of Bear Stearns and AIG. Geithner and Fink share a close personal relationship. The two sit on the board of the Council of Foreign Relations and were communicating frequently in the Great Recession. This pushed the money managers into the national spotlight. And in the early days of the coronavirus pandemic, the Fed system called on BlackRock again. In the following months, the central bank purchased trillions of dollars in various assets and debts, including corporate bonds. BlackRock was tapped to manage this portion of the purchases. Experts warn that BlackRock's work with the Fed could raise conflicts of interest.
BlackRock is in control of multiple major banks. In the words of Bloomberg, BlackRock is the fourth branch of government. But how does ESG score affect these companies? This is the letter from Larry Fink from 2018. Contribute to society or risk losing our support. Which is ironic coming from a man with close ties to Chinese Communist Party. So here's the catch. If a company's ESG score isn't up to scratch, investors start getting cold feet and may pull their funds. Moreover, if BlackRock, along with their stock predicting wizardry tool, Aladdin, recommends retreating from a company, it tends to trigger a domino effect, with other investors following suit and also withdrawing their investments. According to S&P Global, Tesla, an actual environmentally conscious company, has an ESG score lower than most automakers, lower than Chevron, an oil company. Get this, lower than Philip Morris. Yeah, the same Philip Morris contributing to a significant number of tobacco-related deaths every year. So there you have it, an oil company and tobacco company outscore eco-friendly company on an environmental scale. It's like a Monty Python skit, but not nearly as funny. However, Tesla seems largely unfazed by all this, and truthfully, other companies could benefit from adopting a similar stance. Yes, in the short term they may experience some financial setbacks, but in the long haul, prioritizing quality over ESG score could yield a greater returns and success. Now, what's even more worrying is that institutions are already giving citizens an environmental, social, and governance score. This is from Reclaim the Net. What was once a rating metric reserved for businesses and lenders, the ESG score is now rather alarmingly coming to individuals as well. These attempts at convergence or tracking and evaluating people and business entities is by no means unique or new. But if reports are to be believed, it is gaining momentum, while private citizens seem to be largely oblivious to it. Yep, like that creepy Black Mirror episode. We could all be walking around with a score above our heads that reflects how well we adhere to someone else's idea of proper behavior. ESG is not just a metric, folks. It's a control mechanism wrapped up in a goose of corporate responsibility, and that's a big pill to swallow. So, my digital explorers, ESG is not just a metric system. It's a game of thrones, where agendas are kings and compliance is queen. So join me on Twitter, like, share and subscribe on YouTube, and see you soon!